Alright, so check this out. Unhinged. The most unhinged thing ever just happened to me, and I honestly don't even know where to start. I'll try to start at the beginning. I'm a 41-year-old female, and I have a daughter that's 23. We don't live together, and she's all grown up, but we do try to get together every couple of weeks and just spend some time together. Tonight, we went shoe shopping and decided to stop next door of the shoe place at Ruby Tuesdays for dinner because we were hungry. We didn't really want Ruby Tuesdays, but it was close to where we were shopping, and we were both so hungry, so we agreed that we would just go there and get a quick bite. We get our table, and we're seated by a woman wearing a pink handkerchief in her hair. She takes our drink orders and brings our drinks. A few minutes later, she takes our food orders. Time starts going by, and the place has hardly anyone there, and my kid and I are just catching up. I notice a table next to me. 3 women. Appears to be maybe 3 generations of women, like a grandma, a mom, and an adult daughter. While waiting for our meal, I notice their plates are empty. Like, totally empty. But they keep taking bites. There's no conversation. The youngest of the group is sitting very upright and smiling and nodding. The middle-aged one of the group says, "We should just get this wrapped up to go." But there's nothing on their plates. I sort of gesture to my kid like, "Are you seeing this?" Beck is playing over the music speakers, and I make a comment like, "Beck is sort of a weird choice for Ruby Tuesday." I quietly sing along. Dave Matthews Band plays next, Crash Into Me. My kid says, "You know all these songs." I reply, "Well, I'm a 90s kid," and we laugh. An hour later, we still have no food, and I'm wondering, do I want to be a Karen and ask when our food will come out? I politely flag a server and say, "Hey, I really have work early tomorrow. Can I just pay for the drinks that we had, and you can cancel my order? It's been an hour and we have to get going." The woman in the pink handkerchief says yes. She walks past me, and I swear to God, I really do. She walked past me going in the same direction not 5 seconds later, stops, says, "Your order should be out soon." I glance at my kid with that knowing look. My kid says quietly, "I'm starting to feel really anxious. Can we just leave?" I nod, relieved that it wasn't just me feeling weird. Dave Matthews' Crash Into Me plays again, and we're really uncomfortable. Pink handkerchief server comes back around and says, "The kitchen is backed up. Please don't leave." But I insist that we have to go. I pay, I leave a tip, and we get out of there. The whole vibe changed when we stepped outside. We went the whole car ride asking each other, "Did you see that? What the hell just happened?" Everything felt bad. I'm not even hungry anymore, considering I didn't even eat. Everything was really, really weird. My kid noticed it too. The Dave Matthews Band makes me feel uncomfortable too. Missing time. So this happened to me like 20 years or so ago. I was about 18. I got off the morning shift at work at around 11-ish and went to make the 1.5 kilometer walk over to my girlfriend's house. There was a snowstorm that day and it was a slow-going trudge to get there. I remember feeling that it took longer than average to get there, maybe naturally given the weather. However, I arrived at her place at nearly 4:30 p.m. I have no worldly idea what happened and where those 5 hours went. Sure, it was a slow walk through the deep snow, but it certainly was no more than an hour. It's always bothered me where that time had went to. This person includes an edit that says, "The interesting thing was everything was normal, up until one spot. It was in the suburbs, so there was a pathway, kind of like an alley. There were no cars, and only for pedestrians or bikes, between two houses. It has a slight turn in it, so you can't see completely through it. Somewhere around that turn in the middle, that's definitely the spot where I felt the time disappear. Something very strange happened to me and my mom. I figured this would be a great place to share this experience. I truly can't explain it, and neither can my mom or anyone else that I've talked to. About a year ago, my mom was helping me with laundry and washed the towels from the bathroom for me. I've had the same ones for a couple of months, just generic gray towels. She folded them and put them in my bathroom. Next morning, I go to use the towel and I notice a button sewed into my face towel, which struck me as odd. I asked my mom if she had gotten new towels or something, and she asked me why, and I showed her the button. The craziest part is that it wasn't even sewn in properly. The threads went through the towel as if it were sewn while folded, so you couldn't completely unfold it anymore. She told me, "Oh, I thought you did that for some reason," and we both freaked the F out. The only logical explanation that I could come up with is someone broke into my apartment and sewed a damn button onto my face towel. We've since installed cameras out front and door sensors as well. I seriously don't get it. Has anyone else ever had an experience like this? I saw myself drive by. I went on a brisk walk yesterday to get some fresh air. It was in the evening and not many cars were out and about. I was getting ready to cross an intersection when a single car, a white Toyota Corolla, was stopped at the light. I didn't cross because I looked in the car and I saw myself in the driver's seat. I was shocked and it sent shivers down my spine. They had the same clothes that I was wearing, same jacket, same everything. I was frozen in place and I gasped. All of a sudden, the person in the car, me, looks over directly at me and smiles and remains frozen in that state. They never blinked or moved at all, just a dead stare right into my face. The smile seemed to widen more and more with each second that went by, and I still couldn't move. The most terrifying fear came over me. I closed my eyes and I could still feel them staring me down. I could hear my heart rapidly beating. I was short of breath, and a good 30 seconds has passed at this point. When I opened my eyes, I saw the red light had changed and the car was already up the road, having gone through the green light. I could hear the engine getting more faint as it drove on. Silence filled the air once more, and I was left with only the memory of what just happened. I took a deep breath. Shaken by my event, I quickly ended my walk and went back home. Wow, this is why I stay in so much, just when I think I've seen it all. Never happened. This happened like 5 years ago. My stepdaughter was about 6 or 7 years of age, and although it did perplex me, I let it go because I didn't really believe it. There had to have been a logical explanation, i.e., a flawed recollection of events. But I was 100% sure, from my perspective, that I was not wrong. It's very simple and a very small moment. One evening, I tell my daughter to go take out the trash can at the end of the property because the next day it would be collected. At this time, she'd gotten her first iPhone, and would pay attention to it more than her chores or tasks. So in the process, I see her walk to the trash can, grab it with one hand, and with her other hand, she pulls out her phone from her back pocket. She then starts making her way down the lawn towards the street, looking at her screen and struggling to maneuver the can properly at the same time. I can see her face illuminated by her phone, so I can tell she's not really paying attention to what she's doing. As she reaches the curb, naturally she has to allow it to roll off the curb onto the street pavement and place it to where the trash truck can reach for it. At this point, still focusing more on her phone, the trash can rolls off unevenly, tips over, and falls. Immediately, I think to myself to tell her something about the fact that she would have a much easier time if only she'd focus, and that she would definitely survive a moment without her phone. She puts the phone away and picks the trash can back up. When she gets back to the door, I begin telling her about this, and as I'm bothered by it, her mother interrupts and starts defending her. I told her about the fact that this was caused by her literally looking at her phone screen the entire time while lazily dragging the can in the other hand. Her mother looks at me and, upset, now says, "She doesn't even have her phone. What are you talking about?" My stepdaughter shows me that she didn't have it and then goes to get it from her room. But how? Of course she did. I could prove it. We have a front door camera. In our argument, I open up the app and play the moment in full screen. In the video, she walks out the door and you can see the back pockets have nothing in them. She grabs the trash can and she walks out of view. I clearly remember most of her face being lit up as she walked with her phone in hand, and yet she never had it. I don't see how I could have so drastically seen something so different from what evidence showed actually transpired, but yet I did. Stopped at a red light that didn't exist. I was reading through these and decided I would share the weirdest glitch that I've personally experienced. A few years back, I lived in a sober house. Great group of guys that I actually got pretty close to. One night, a good friend that lived in the house with me and I went over to talk to a friend that had relapsed. We had a good conversation for about 2 hours. Around midnight, we decided it was getting late, and so we left. Instead of taking the throughway back, we decided to get some Wendy's and take the long way back. About 20 minutes into our drive, down a road that I had been on dozens of times, I suddenly see a light ahead of me turn red, and I have to come to a fairly quick stop. We both look up, and at the same time I see a cop taking a right-hand turn at the same intersection. We're both a bit relieved. Neither of us were deep enough into sobriety to shake that innate addict fear of cops. We're sitting there just chuckling to ourselves, and after 30 seconds, we're both looking up at the light and chatting. A whole minute goes by, and then 2, and the light is still red. Which, by this point, we both make a comment on how long it's been red for. Immediately after this, there's suddenly headlights coming through my rear window, and I don't mean that they slowly faded in. I mean they were just there. A large SUV suddenly swerves by, laying on the horn and hollering something out his window. My friend and I immediately comment something like, "Look at this butthead blowing a red light and blaming us." And as we both looked up, we realized there is no red light. Not only is there no red light, but there's no lights at all. Above us is an empty intersection, 4 stop signs, and nothing else. We were both so creeped out, we looked at each other and said, "What the Cinnamon Toast Crunch?" His face was white. We got home after that without incident and never talked about it again. This was almost 4 years ago, and I've never forgotten that.
We teleported? I joined Reddit and the sub a while ago because I think about my glitch experience at least weekly. I finally have enough karma to post it. Please, let me know what you think because it's gonna drive me crazy to not understand what's going on. This was in 2016 or 2017. My friend and I were driving through a quiet and small neighborhood in Traverse City, Michigan. It was a rainy day, middle of the day, and we were stone cold sober. I feel like I need to say that to feel validated. We passed a street and I mentioned something about our friend Ashley recently moving to a house on that street. And just for the sake of the story, I think it was Fern Street or something like that. Next thing we know, we were stopped at a stop sign at a T in the road. An older model, olive greenish convertible was turning left off the cross street, onto the street that we were stopped at. The guy driving it had to jerk his wheel super hard to avoid hitting us as he made the turn. It was like he didn't see us until he was halfway through his turn. I looked over at my friend and she was already looking at me. I looked back outside and I didn't recognize a damn thing. It was now a sunny day and all of our entire surroundings were completely unfamiliar. My friend was like, "Han, I'm scared, where are we?" And I kept asking her the same thing. I asked if she saw the car almost hit us, and she had, but neither of us knew where we were or what was happening. Suddenly, everything became familiar again. It was like our entire surroundings morphed into a recognizable intersection, and I was like, oh my god, we're right near the Sail Inn, which was a bar that we knew. The weather was rainy again, and we knew the exact intersection that we were stopped at. I asked my friend what she remembered last before we got to the stop sign, and she said she remembered me talking about the Fern Street. That was the last thing that I remembered too, so we drove back to that street, and it was 3 blocks down the road. My friend hates being reminded of this day because it still scares the crap out of her, and it haunts me because I'm so fascinated by that experience, but I also just want to know what the F happened to my damn mind and body and existence during those moments. The only thing I wish is that we knew what time it was and how long that lasted. It felt like it was slow and fast at the same time. I don't know, man. It's weird stuff that I'll probably die trying to understand. And this is why I have FOMO about dying.
I don't think objects are glitching. We are. I never thought this would happen to me, but here we are, and I had a witness. Today, I was bending over, cleaning something off the floor with kitchen wipes. I saw that the floor was clean, no more spill, and decided to wipe one more time to make sure it was disinfected. Suddenly, the spill was back and I was smearing it all over the floor. I jumped back and shouted, "What the F? Where did that come from?" My son was standing there, handing me the wipes, and he said that the spill on the floor was there and that it wasn't all clean. I said, no, it was there, and I cleaned it, and suddenly it was back. I was wiping the clean floor one last time to make sure it was germ-free, and then suddenly the spill reappeared. He said he was watching me the whole time and didn't see me totally clean the floor, but the second that this happened, he was frozen and then suddenly unfroze. I felt like everything stopped and then started within a small amount of time, so short that we can't perceive it actually happening, but I did, and I know others here have too. In that moment, when I saw the floor was clean and then realized it wasn't, I was there, but it felt like my body was on autopilot and that I had left and came back within just a few seconds. I felt off, and I also felt like time slowed a bit and then quickly sped back up. I don't think objects are disappearing and then reappearing. I think something is happening to us. I don't think the spill suddenly disappeared and then reappeared. I think I did. We're leaving and coming back, but when we come back to the same moment in time and space, something's a little different because we're coming back a few seconds earlier than when we left. It's like I left after the spill was wiped and then came back a few seconds later. Where we're going? I don't know. But it's happening outside of our perception of time. Either we're all totally crazy and losing it, or having a collective episode of insanity, or something's happening to us that we don't understand. Hey, it's me. Guess who's sick again? Dude, this winter to spring transition is just killing me. So my vocal register is a little bit lower than normal, and I probably sound a little more whisperier than normal. It just hurts the least to talk like this. And if this is something that you deem unforgivable, then just know I'm apologizing for nothing. Okay, let's keep going. Weird writing on my stomach appears out of nowhere and then vanishes within minutes. About 12 years ago, this weird-ass thing happened to me. I was at a friend's house, and it was 3 of us in total. We had just arrived, and we went to his basement to hang out. Within like 5 or 10 minutes, I was laying down, watching TV, chilling, and my shirt was like kind of up, and I had my hand resting on my stomach. My one buddy notices writing on my stomach and mentions it. I look down and I see like this paragraph of 150 to maybe 200 words worth of writing in black font on my stomach. It was perfect, with no smudges. It looked like someone tattooed it on. Actually, that was my first thought, like, who the F tattooed me while I was sleeping? I know that's a weird thing to think, but I didn't know what else to think. I even licked my finger and tried to rub it off, but nothing would smudge. My other buddy was like, "Hey, it's written backwards. Let's go see if we can read what it says by looking in a mirror." So we all 3, scared as foretold, go upstairs to the bathroom to try and read it. I lift my shirt up and then I see it literally unwrite itself off my body before it vanishes. The way it came off me was like writing in reverse. So if you filmed yourself writing something and then watched it in reverse, that's how it came off me. Still, to this day, no idea what the F that was or how to explain it. Do you have any thoughts? All eyes on me, wondering if this has happened to anyone else. It was the summer of 2019, and I was with an ex who had 3 daughters. We decided to take them to a local fair, and it was one of the last nights, so it was packed. He had taken his oldest with him to go on a ride that the 2 little ones couldn't go on. I had gotten them tickets, and we walked around going on different rides for 3 and 4-year-olds. I had one on each side of me, and they were holding my hand. We had to walk around the fair to get to the one ride that they wanted to go on when time seemed to slow down. It was probably only a few seconds, but it felt like an entire eternity. I remember all of a sudden everything got real slow, and there was no noise at all. I couldn't hear talking, the rides, nothing but my own heart. And everyone that passed was staring at me. It's hard to explain, but all of a sudden, every single person that I passed while walking were suddenly just staring at me in a look of horror. I remember it feeling like they were all actors, and for that brief moment, they were scared that I realized what was going on. I can't explain it properly, but I remember it felt like they knew me in some way. It wasn't just one or two people who were staring at me. It was every single person that we passed. They stopped what they were doing and gawked at me as if I was the center of everyone's attention. I remember it felt like things were coming to a head, and then all of a sudden, sound returned. People went back to being normal, and time sped back up. I've never forgotten about this and was just thinking about it this morning, wondering if anyone else ever experienced anything like this. I was not under the influence of anything, and this is one of many strange experiences that I've had during my lifetime. My house burned, and I think I shifted. My house burned down last year, and since then, I've been noticing strange inconsistencies, but I could never really put my finger on it. Until today, I had my biggest one. My sister was talking about signing up to uni and the pathways, and I referred to my bachelor's, but suddenly, my mother said I only finished an undergraduate degree. What the F? I'm 28. My whole life after I graduated, I've been saying and knowing for a fact that I had a bachelor's. I remember studying for 3 years, for God's sake, which is additional to my previous accreditation with an advanced diploma. She says it was only a year and a half. The problem is my bachelor's paperwork burned in the fire, along with my entire room, and I can't find myself on any online database. My passport and birth certificate and everything burnt as well. I'll call the school to try and figure it out on Monday, but either way, no matter the result, this is so weird and just adds to the other weird things. Everything is just off. This person includes an edit that says, "I meant she thought I had an associate's degree. I realize in Australia, bachelor's is undergrad, but I'm just really in a confused state. The main thing is the missing time and the differing memory on such a key thing that I was so sure of."
Friend had a similar story to the lamp. My friend, let's call him Brian, is my classmate in college. Just yesterday, while having lunch with him, he just suddenly told me about one of the weirdest incidents in his life that happened around 5 years ago. He used to live in a 2-story house in London before moving to Asia, where we are now. He remembers going down the stairs, and then suddenly, he just woke up in a bar. He's also not the type to drink and was also underage, so it was pretty weird that he suddenly woke up in a bar in the United States. He said that he was still the same age and had the same family, but literally, he was based in the US all of a sudden. He went to school and just lived his life as a normal teenager/student. He would very often get these sharp headaches like a few times a month and would get checked for it, but he said the doctors would always clear him after the tests were done. He had a really nice life, and a pet dog too. Suddenly, there were just these times that headaches would get too bad for him, and he couldn't fall asleep at all. That's when he said he started having this very strong urge to go back to the bar that he just woke up from suddenly. Eventually, he gave in to his urges and went back to the bar. He said he tried having a beer and suddenly he was involved in a fight. The last thing he remembers was that he was hit in the head with a chair. And then suddenly, he woke up and was at the bottom of the staircase in his house in London. He could barely move, and the ambulance was called and he was brought to the hospital afterwards. He went to a couple of psychiatrists to help him understand what happened to him, since he said that he basically had depression after the incident because it was all so surreal that he literally lived 4 years of his life, and then suddenly they disappeared. All of his friends in the US didn't even exist at all since he tried looking for them on various social media accounts and Googling them as well. I told him about the lamb story that I read here before a while back, and he's 100% convinced that what happened to that guy also happened to him. So far, he's okay now, but sometimes he tells me that he's still afraid because he doesn't know if this is already the true reality, because this is what it felt like for him back in the US as well. There's also a scar on his head from the stitches of the fall that he had, so I'm assuming it was a pretty bad fall too. I broke my left collarbone last night and woke up this morning with my right collarbone broken and my left one perfectly fine. I have no explanation, and everyone says that it was my right clavicle that I broke, not my left. When I have vivid memories of it breaking and popping out of place, I remember the doctors assigning a left arm sling and taking the x-ray with it on. I was playing football with my friends and was tackled and flipped onto my side, crushing it. I asked my parents if they had any photos of me with my sling on, and they didn't. This whole situation is just weird as hell, and no one believes me, so I decided that I would tell you all here. This person includes an update that says, I just went in for my checkup and a possible TBI. No concussion or brain injury whatsoever. I got info on the x-rays and they showed a broken right clavicle. Really, no explanation, I guess, for what happened the night that I broke it. And for everyone asking, I'm doing well. The doctors say I've got a 5 to 6 week recovery. Weird wall in my house. This is kind of hard to describe, and I'm not even sure if this is the place for it, but it sure seems like a glitch to me, albeit a long-term and ongoing one. One of the walls in my house has a relatively large window downstairs and a large mirror upstairs. When you stand in front of either the mirror or the window, by the way, the window does the same thing whether you're inside or out, the reflections, they don't move correctly. I noticed it the day that we moved in when I was doing the washing up. I moved my head slightly sideways, and as I did so, the reflection of the wall behind me moved slightly diagonally up and down instead of just moving sideways. It's as though your eyes immediately feel distorted when you try and look at the reflection, and although it's perfectly in focus, it moves ever so slightly as though the tracking is off. I'm a carpenter, and I've checked the wall for plumb. It's not that. I've got loads of other windows and multiple other mirrors, and none of them do it. It's just on that one wall, but it seems to be the wall, or at least that plane itself, as it's both upstairs and down. Has anyone experienced anything similar, or have any thoughts? This Redditor includes an edit that says, a reply to many. We've tried getting it on video, and it just doesn't come across. The rooms are only about 6 feet wide, so you can't get enough in shot to get the effect. And I'm not the only one who's noticed it. My other half and parents have noticed it too. There's a second edit that says, we've hung multiple mirrors in the same spot. We've cleaned the window inside and out and used different lights to see if they affect it. No change. It's the wall they're on that seems to be causing whatever it is. I appreciate that this sounds like it should have a perfectly rational explanation, but I cannot for the life of me explain it. If it were just the mirror, or just the window, or if the wall were a few degrees off plumb, I'd just chalk it up to my brain playing tricks or optical illusions, but none of the above apply. I consider myself a man of science, and I can't explain this. Is this a glitch? We watched a plane disappear. It was daytime, around 3 p.m., sunny and clear skies all day. As a frequent passenger, I look out the window and up at the sky pretty often. And on this day, they were driving and I was scrolling on my phone and occasionally sky watching. I noticed a plane. It was too small to see what exact airline, but it had a dark blue detailing, so maybe Delta or American, flying across the sky as I usually see any other time, and then I shifted my eyes to continue looking down at my phone. The way this happened so fast is really, it's unexplainable. And the very same second that I began to shift my eyes from the plane back down to my phone, it literally blinked out of the sky mid-flight. Literally, before my eyes fully landed back on my phone, I could still see it in my peripheral and saw it just disappear as if I blinked, but I hadn't. I didn't even fully register what happened until my friend also got frantic. She almost fully braked the car in the middle of the street, and we were in a residential neighborhood area, not on the highway, so we weren't going above 40 miles an hour, and she asked me if I had also just seen that. I didn't know that she had also been occasionally watching the plane go by, so I began looking around and the sky was completely clear. I even stuck my head completely out the window to verify what we had just seen, and the plane was seriously nowhere to be found. This was such a quick, simple glitch, like clicking refresh on a web page, the plane just blinked. I don't think I'll ever forget this. It was too wild. I look at the sky way too often to mistake this for a bird or a bug, and having a witness further solidifies this. This person includes an edit that says, "This was my first post here. I didn't know how to come prepared with specifics of my location and the time and date. I just came across this thread and wanted to share because I think about this every day. This isn't some mystery I put in here to be solved, so please don't ask me for my exact location, and I don't have the exact time to the minute. That's why I said around 3 p.m. Come on, guys. Leave Brittany alone." The wallet holding the debit card I had just used was found by an old friend nearly an hour away after I had just paid and left a store. So, I was 17 and stayed a few days at my best friend's house while not having had to do work in a few days. My home life was rough and in the opposite direction of my workplace, so rather than go to my mom's house and risk whatever that would entail, I opted to stop by Ross to buy some work clothes. I was a hostess at a nice-ish restaurant, but I didn't need anything really fancy. A button-up shirt and some slacks, really. I pulled the debit card from my wallet to pay and put the wallet back in my bag, and then I headed to work. I hadn't eaten, and I usually grabbed a soup and salad from work if I had time to do so. But when I reached into my bag, I couldn't find my wallet that I had used all of 20 minutes before this point in time. Just after, I got a call from an old friend who'd moved away maybe 6 months to a year prior. He told me he'd found my wallet in the parking lot of his apartment complex nearly an hour away. I met up with him after work halfway between the cities we lived in to get my wallet. It still had all of my cards, my cash, and my ID in it, but it had been folded entirely in half so that all the cards were useless, and I'd have to have all the plastic in there replaced. It was dirty and torn, I mean, obviously it was run over, but how did it travel 50 miles in 25 minutes? With time to have been lost and found in a random parking lot of a small town apartment complex that I've never been to, that a friend, coincidentally and thankfully a close friend, happened to live in. No one else from that town would have been able to find that ID and have my phone number on hand in order to call me so quickly. This was in the time of flip phones. They couldn't just find me online. We still talk from time to time about this glitch in the Matrix, so I was excited to have found this sub. First ever confusing moment in my life. I was in school and I went to the toilets to call someone. So I was on the phone and this kid walks in to use the toilet. He was about 5'10", chubby, blonde hair, blue glasses, and white. I'm a person that remembers faces really well. So naturally, I leave the toilets to continue my call. Facing the door, not like 15 seconds after, literally the same kid enters the toilets. Now keep in mind, I'm still outside the toilet door on a phone, and no one has left the toilets. I was so confused at that moment, so after that kid went inside, I went back in to see if I was tripping. The dude was there alone. All alone. The toilet has only 2 stalls, and yeah, I did check them, with no one. I don't know if I got to see the future or if it was something logical and explainable, but it was an exciting moment for me. Major glitch at the grocery store. I was shopping last week. Nothing exciting. I got the same things that I always get. A bunch of bananas and a bag of apples. This is important. I then pile all my groceries on top of that produce because I do produce first, like every normal person. I literally put a loaf of bread right on top of the naked bananas. When I got to the checkout, I unpacked my groceries from the top of the cart. This was the only part of the cart that I used that day. And I get down to the produce, and in my cart is 1 bag of bananas in a produce bag, and 1 bag of apples, also in a produce bag. Here's the thing though, I never use produce bags, ever. I hate the way they feel, and I have never, ever, ever in my life put my bananas in one of those things. Also, I was never away from my cart. It's like the items are right, but packaged totally wrong. It's the weirdest thing ever, and either someone had the exact same items as me and somehow switched carts with me and I didn't notice, and it was in the seconds before I put the bread on top of the bananas, which didn't happen, or something else happened. I've never in my life ever thought that I must be living in a simulation, except for that moment. A glitch at the museum. It was spring of 1999 in New York City. I was spending the morning with my infant and toddler sons at the Museum of Natural History. We were in the lobby. I had the baby in an infant carrier on my chest. My 2.5-year-old was in the front seat of a double stroller. It was a well-made stroller, but the design was terrible. They don't even make strollers like it now. It was pretty much 2 full-size strollers, one in front of the other. It was too long and narrow and unwieldy and hard to manage. I was helping my son get out of the front seats. He was a well-coordinated, agile kid, so our move was I would put on all the brakes and then hold his hand as he stood on the stroller bar and jumped to the ground. Easy peasy. We'd been doing it for 2 months. Except this time it went wrong. I was holding his hand with one hand, my other arm around the baby on my chest. As he jumped, something went wrong with the brakes and the stroller swung out from under him mid-jump. His feet flipped up in the air and he was falling to the ground head first. I wasn't able to get my other hand free in time to catch him. It was paralyzingly terrifying. Everything was in slow motion and it seemed like it got dark and all the sound stopped. I watched him going head first for the solid stone floor of the lobby of the museum with no way to stop it. And then, all at once, the sound came back and there he was, standing in front of me, safe and sound, with his feet on the ground. What the F? I was so stunned and shaken and felt like I was going to cry. As I hugged him and held him close, I was looking around to see if anyone had noticed anything strange, but everyone was just doing their thing. I guess I must have looked startled because he said, "What, Mommy?" I was so wigged out, I just couldn't talk about it. He's 27 now and doesn't remember any of it. But I really wish I had asked him then what he experienced. He was verbally precocious and had quite a lot to say at that age. I wonder what his answer would have been. I didn't believe in glitches before that. No possible way could that have happened without a full-on 100% glitch in the Matrix. These aren't my keys, and that isn't my locker. This happened about a year and a half ago, and it still creeps me out to this day. I had once gone to the gym I'd always go to, and upon arrival, I put my bag in a locker, I take out my locker's keys out of my wallet, and I lock it. I then put my keys in my phone case as I usually do. Fast forward to an hour and I dropped my phone while working out. And since my keys were in my phone case, the phone case dislodged and the keys fell out. I picked them up and put them back in my phone case. No biggie. After I finish working out, I go to unlock my locker and try as I might, I couldn't open the locker for the life of me. I was panicking, thinking that someone had opened my locker, stole my bag, which had my wallet and some valuables. I go to the reception and this instructor, using a pair of pliers, forced the locker open, only to realize that it did not have my bag and that it had someone else's. I was really confused until the instructor pointed at a locker above the one he had just opened, and that locker had the keys inside the padlock still, covered with the box that they came in. We then opened that locker and, lo and behold, my bag was there. Needless to say, I was confused as hell, and I think so was the instructor when I handed him my keys for my phone case, which apparently weren't mine. But someone else had my keys too and switched my locker? It makes no sense considering each key is one of a kind. I have a feeling that very few will believe this actually happened, but I swear on my life, it's true. Weird thing happened. Statue people. This happened about a year or so ago. I live in Florida on the East Coast. I was driving home from an appointment on A1A. Along this section are several access points to the beach, so people are crossing. This was later in the evening, but it wasn't dark yet. I saw a couple on the sidewalk, mid-steps, but standing like statues, and I thought maybe they were just trying to be funny. A little ways further, I see another couple with a dog right at the corner, about to cross over to the beach, except they were mid-step and also like statues, even the dog. My street was a bit further beyond. When I got home, I looked online to see if there was some weird trend where elderly couples were being statues, but I found nothing. I checked the Nextdoor app for the next week to see if there was some local prank going on, but also nothing. I was super freaked out and worried that I'm losing it, but it was real. I still think about it a lot.
A flock of birds just insta-died in front of me. There were a flock of birds flying around where I was driving. They got pretty close, about 10 meters away from me, and they suddenly all just died, got paralyzed, or something like that. Around 15 birds were now just either motionless or convulsing out of nowhere in front of me. There were no electrical lines around anywhere. I remember it so vividly because I immediately checked if there was anything hazardous around that might bite me in the ass too, but nothing was in sight. Just empty pavement. Could there be any rational explanation as to what I just witnessed? Maybe they built up a charge from hanging around electrical lines? I mean, I don't know. What do you think? My partner switched places with an alternate version of themselves before switching back. For context, I am 21 and I've been with my partner for going on 6 years. They're not the type of person to play pranks on me, but for an hour or so, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they were a completely different person. They looked the same, talked the same, laughed the same, but their stories of us were very different. In that timeline, we'd met senior year of high school. They lived with their dad, they had a brother and a sister, and we lived in a different state. But me and my partner actually met in sophomore year. Their dad wasn't in the picture, they have 2 sisters and no brother, and we live in Oklahoma. We talked for an hour or so, and I was on the edge the entire time, begging them to tell me that they were joking, but they never did. I brought it up not long after, and they told me about that timeline as well. Same details, but the uncanniness of it all was that the recording I took on my phone of the incident was corrupted. I had sent the video to a friend, and it was corrupted on their phone too, but they remember getting it and listening to it, so it wasn't like I sent them something else. I don't know what happened, and I still don't to this day. My partner still swears up and down that it wasn't a joke, a prank, or anything like that. If you guys have any ideas, please feel free to share. This person includes an edit that says, "After reading a bunch of comments and thinking about how they did tell me that they had OSDD, I never thought this was a symptom of OSDD or anything like this. Thank you." Weird thing happened today. I have a part-time job that entails me walking around a small town all day. I have the ability to slack off, and so I do. So every morning, I get a coffee and bring it to an old man that runs a small local specialty shop. I sit in his shop and we chat for about an hour a day. I know his tiny 400 square foot store pretty well. His radio, what's in the store, stuff like that. Today, while I was sitting in there, he looked a little off. I don't know how to explain it, but he looked like he didn't feel well. I even asked him, and he said he was fine. He wears the same shirt every day to do his work. It's like an apron to him. That also wasn't on him today at first. As we're sitting there, I hear loud and clear a PA system say something and cut off suddenly. Almost like a voice put out into the air. Like a voice from nowhere, but with the static of a PA. Clear as day from within the store. I asked Tony, the shop owner, and he didn't hear it. But immediately after it, he changed into his work shirt and started acting normal. It was almost like a movie, and someone told him to get into character, and then he was just regular. I couldn't make out what the voice said, but I was so weirded out by this. This happened a decade ago, but I still can't explain it. I recently shared this experience with my boyfriend after we'd experienced some maybe paranormal stuff, and I figured I'd share to see if anyone knows what this was, because it doesn't seem paranormal, although it is weird. Maybe about 10 years ago, I was working as a manager at a small-ish restaurant chain. I'd been with the company for a while, but was fairly new at this location. It was in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, USA, which probably doesn't mean anything to most people. But the two jobs I'd had prior in that town are a little locally famous for being haunted. I'd had my share of ghost sightings and weird stuff, but this was different. The building here was 3 floors. Bottom was an antique store and half of the restaurant. Then the second floor was all restaurant. On the 3rd floor was an abandoned ballroom with all glass walls that likely once overlooked a lake behind the property. But a hotel had been built since and blocked the view. Super creepy space, but nobody ever went up there. Might be irrelevant, but that's the property. We had a pretty bad snowstorm this particular day. I'd been shoveling and salting the walkways and went in to start my shift. I'm walking from the kitchen on the 2nd floor and down a couple of steps to the dining room area, and something hit me. I squeezed my eyes shut, brought my hands up to my face, and fell back a little and yelled out, "Come on, guys." In the moment, I thought someone had taken a bucket of rock salt and threw it at me. It felt like thousands of little pieces of something hard pelted me on my whole body. I was half expecting it to be a prank, but I opened my eyes after a bit and was like pulling on my shirt to check for salt or something in my bra because I felt it literally everywhere. But there was nothing there. Once I realized I was fine and not covered in a pile of salt or rocks or whatever, I looked around and 2 of the waitresses were just staring at me, like stopped setting tables wide-eyed. Because their perspective was that I just stopped, put my hands up to my face to shield something, fell back, yelled, "Come on, guys," and then started pulling on my shirt like I was trying to shake something out of it. They saw me react, but nothing would cause the reaction. I'm not sure exactly what that was or what it could have been. Someone I knew died twice in 2 different ways, and it was in the newspapers. I went to a high school in a very small, 1-stoplight sort of town. A few years after school, I was catching up with an old friend, and she told me how these 2 boys that we both knew pretty well had passed away. We'll call them Josh and Sean. I asked what had happened, and she sent me the news article about how they were working in a shop and an air compressor had exploded and killed them both. Fast forward a few years later, and somehow it came up in a conversation that I was having with my dad. I decided to try to find the news article that I had previously read about it. Instead, I found an article about how Josh had been shot by people who broke into his house looking for drugs. There was actually a lot of detail in the article about the incident, and it was an unsolved crime. There was no mention of Sean at all, and I couldn't find any articles about anything happening to him. I don't have any connections anymore to anyone in the town, so I can't check to see if anyone else remembers it the original way. It's just crazy because I remember vividly reading both articles. I know for a fact that it wasn't just someone with the same name for two different reasons. First, he had a very unusual last name, and it was a very small town. Second, there were actually pictures of him provided in both articles, and it was 100% the kid that I knew from school. Another strange twist is that I looked up the story again just now to see if there was anything new. It seems the case was solved and 4 or maybe 5 people went to prison for it. The second story has also now been featured in an episode of a TV series that I've never heard of. I'm considering trying to track it down so I can watch it. My dog confirms the glitch. First of all, forgive me if something is not written well. English is not my first language. Well, there I was, playing video games in my room with my dog lying next to me, and my boyfriend working on the computer in his office, which is opposite, but at a considerable distance since my house is quite big. I listened to him start to have a conversation with a colleague over the headphones. Whenever he concentrates on talking, he starts walking around the house, so I'm not surprised to hear him walking away towards the kitchen. My hallway is long and it echoes, and I heard him talking as he crossed it. And once there, he starts moving things around in the kitchen. I thought he would want to eat something, as did my dog, who immediately raised his head, listening to the noises, and ran towards the kitchen. What happened next is that I immediately heard his voice much closer. He has a high-pitched voice, and I even got a little scared. I raised my head and I saw him leaving the next room, still focused on the conversation. I thought my ears had deceived me and that he was there the whole time until I looked down the hallway and see my dog arrive, who stares at my boyfriend, very puzzled, and then turns his head a couple of times towards the kitchen and then again to my boyfriend. Would he be so focused that he teleported away without realizing it? Did my dog come in to see him in the kitchen? The poor guy just seems really confused. I don't know how to explain to him that sometimes the Matrix just fails. Time glitch in Washington State. Okay, so this happened in April of last year. My mom and I were on a road trip together in another state, driving on a state highway north of the major interstate, probably 60 or so miles. We wanted a better experience than typical highway driving, so it was a great scenic route. We were driving through vast swaths of farmland and small ag communities spread out every 45 or 60 minutes of driving. So we're out there, if you will, hours away from the nearest big city. It was absolutely beautiful, by the way. I was in passenger, just enjoying the scenery. About 3/4 of the way to our destination, the speed dropped to 25, and the road took a hard, blind left turn into a very small town. Unlike the other ag towns where you can see them on the approach and slow down and drive through them, this one came up abruptly, and it kind of felt like the highway just dumped us into this town. It was very, very tiny, maybe 3 blocks total, and we were out. But what we saw was crazy. A 50s themed diner, an old gas station with the traditional pumps, a Wild West themed general store, and the craziest part, there were a handful of classic cars from the 40s and 50s that all appeared to be in great condition. It looked like they were just parked. There weren't any car shows or people walking around viewing them either. My mom wanted to stop and get some coffee, but something in my gut was off, and I said, "No, hell no, This place is freaky. She then made a comment that it felt like the place was right out of the 50s, and they've kept the theme going. To me, it was giving major sundown town vibes or something. I couldn't place a finger on it. Something was just weird. It took all of 25 seconds to drive through and to get back to a faster speed limit, and we were off. We wrapped the vacation up a few days later, and that was that. I've recalled that experience quite a few times in the past few months, and finally, last night I wanted to look into this place. I traced our route on Google Maps, and after searching for quite a bit, I eventually found it and I checked it out on Street View. Much to my surprise, the Street View looked nothing like my memory. The general store was different, the diner was different, and even the damn gas station with the cool retro pumps, well, that was gone. In its place stood an RV storage with a few tiny campers. The image date was from after our trip, so perfect. They changed it. No issue though. I click on the picture from 2022 before our trip, and much to my utter horror, the only thing different in the older images were the campers. I asked my mom about it today, and she explained the town exactly as I remember it, then also brought up how I made a comment about feeling uneasy, and how she wished that she stopped anyways. Well, I showed her the Street View images and she got freaked out too. And yes, the town on Google Maps is the same one that we drove through. There aren't any other places on that road that cut hard left. I'm 100% certain, and my mom was able to zoom in and eventually find it herself. I literally asked her to do that for my own sanity because this is just freaky. I've been looking through others' experiences, but I can't find anything similar to this. Has anyone heard or experienced firsthand anything like it?
Time disappeared. My glitch story. I've been reading through all your stories, and I think it's about time that I also share mine. I was honestly shocked when I found this sub. I really didn't think this was as common as it seems to be. Every summer in South Spain, we celebrate Feria, which is like an outdoor party with bars built like boxes with no ceiling. So basically, everybody's around the fairgrounds drinking and going in and out of the bars to dance, grab some drinks. You get it. It was around 3 a.m., completely nighttime, and me and my friend were outside the bars having a smoke. My friend suggested going in to take a drink and to see if we can stay for a bit in that place or go looking to see how the others are looking. Now, this is when it becomes incredibly weird. My friend and I, we go inside the bar, all full with people dancing. And I mean, this place is packed with people. We speak with the waiter and we order our drinks. We turn around, and all of a sudden the place is empty. We turn around again to the waiter, and they've also left. No one's there. We go outside, all shocked with our fresh drinks in hand, with fresh ice, and it was clear that the drink was just made at that moment and not hours ago. We look around, and it's daytime. We look at our phones, and they said 8 a.m. We turn back around to the bar, and it's closed. Workers are cleaning the street. There's no one around, and every single bar had their doors closed. Bear in mind that the bars close at 6, so it wouldn't have made any sense that it was later than we thought, because the waiters would still have to clean the place before closing, and literally 1 second before all of this, the bar was full of people and drinks on the floor. My friend remembers everything in the exact same way that I do, and we weren't drunk at all. I'm actually glad that I have a witness. Where the hell is my watermelon? Okay, so this just happened about 30 minutes ago and I cannot explain it. I had groceries delivered from Kroger. In my order is a watermelon and $160 worth of other groceries that aren't even close to being worth to $160, but let's sigh. Anyway, as I'm taking my bags of groceries in from my porch, I see the personal watermelon that I'd ordered in one of the bags. I put that bag down in my foyer along with the others and then fish through several of them to determine which items I'm taking to my garage to put in the outside fridge. Again, America. My garage entrance is just off my foyer, thus laying the bags out on the floor there. So, I take several items to the outside fridge and then bring the remaining bags. It's a heavy heap because there's gallons of juice and, a whole watermelon. I bring them to my kitchen counter. I start emptying the bags, and my 12-year-old comes to help me. As I get down to the last two, I notice that I don't see the watermelon. I ask my 12-year-old, "Hey, where'd you put that watermelon?" And she responds, "What watermelon? I didn't see one." Now, mind you, she never left the kitchen, and she's been in there with me the whole time. I then empty the rest of the bags, and guess what? No watermelon. I think, okay, so maybe I just left it at the front of the house. Maybe I left it on the porch. Maybe I accidentally took it to the garage and left it in there. But nope, not there. Not anywhere. I never actually touched the watermelon, but I did see it, and now it's nowhere to be found. It is quite literally just gone. This person sent me a DM several days after, granting permission for me to read this story, saying they still have not found the watermelon. I left my house later than usual and saw the same person twice. Every day, I had the same 40-minute walk from my house to my classes. I left my house at the same time every day and would always cross paths with a gentleman walking his two dogs. Each morning, I would pass through a forested path that eventually opened into a park, and then I would take the roads to my school. Every single day, this man would pass me just as I was exiting the forest that led to the park. And every single day, I would say good morning to him, and just as he was entering the forest with his dogs, for what I'm assuming was their morning walk. One morning, I was running late, and this time, I had crossed paths with this man sooner in my path inside the forest, just before the exit of the forested path. It made perfect sense to me because if I had left a few minutes earlier, I would have crossed paths with him after exiting the forest as usual. I said good morning, mentally took note of how it was funny passing him and his two dogs in the forest for the first time, and then exited the forest. Upon exiting the forest, I crossed paths with the same man and the two dogs at the usual place, and they passed me entering the forest. Without even thinking, I said, "Good morning." It took a few steps and then stopped when I realized that I had just said good morning to this man and his dogs a few minutes earlier in the forest. I turned around and watched the man and his dogs continue into the forest. I was confused because I remembered taking note of how it was interesting that I passed the man and his dogs sooner in the forest, and how it completely made sense considering that I had left my house a few minutes late. There's only one path, and there isn't any way the same man could have logically passed me and reappeared re-entering the forest. It was strange, and at first I didn't even notice, because I was so used to seeing him right after exiting the forest. I'm not sure why this happened, but This was the first glitch that I've ever experienced. And yeah, I was sober. I traveled a few minutes back in time. Hi. This happened about 8 years ago. I had to take my sister to her appointment at 6 o'clock at a place about 15 minutes from our house. I was watching TV and she came running down the stairs because she hadn't realized we were late. It was already 6 o'clock. I checked my phone and confirmed. Above the door, there's a big clock as well, and it was, no doubt, 6 o'clock when we left home. I started driving pretty fast, but the traffic didn't let me take the turn that I should have to be on time, so I took a detour that would delay us even further. Anyway, we got there and she got out of the car, but on one last look at her phone, she stopped. She looked back at me inquisitively and said, "We're on time." We were 15 minutes early. Her phone said 5:45. What happened? Well, we don't really know. It's funny how people just assume that we had the wrong time in the first place, but we didn't. It was undoubtedly 6 o'clock when we left home. We triple-checked. Plus, the car also had a clock, and it was 6 o'clock too when we left, but it was 5:45 when we made it to our destination. I don't know about you, but I would love to leave my house at the same time that I'm supposed to be somewhere and still show up 15 minutes early. That sounds great. Glitch at the gym. I've heard people jokingly comment, "Oh, it must be a glitch in the Matrix," and I always thought it was just a reference to the movie. Until a few weeks ago when one happened to me. I hope I can explain this clearly because it involves some back and forth between a couple of lockers at my gym. There's a bank of small square lockers near the front door that can be used for jackets or purses instead of going to the locker room and locking everything in a full-size locker. It's convenient, so when it's cold out, I'll occasionally use it for my jacket or my car keys. You set your own 4-digit combo, so you don't need to bring your own lock. There have been a few times when I locked my stuff up and forgot which locker I used. It's a little embarrassing, really, because you have to go get someone who works there that has a key to help you figure out which locker you put your stuff in. On the day this happened, I told myself that I wasn't going to forget which locker I used, so I picked the one at the very top right corner. Let's call it locker number 6. It was locked, so I decided to use the one directly below it. Let's call that one locker number 12. I put my jacket and keys in 12, locked it up, and went to work out. After my workout, I came back, I put my combination in number 12, opened the door, and WTF, someone else's stuff was in that locker that I had just unlocked with my own combination. It was a pink hoodie. I wore a black fleece jacket, and of course, my keys weren't in there either. I thought, okay, there's a slim chance that somebody else had chosen the exact same combination that I had chosen that day. Maybe I really did get number 6 on the top right corner, and maybe my stuff really is in there. Am I losing it? I don't know. So I tried it using my combination, and it wouldn't open. Baffled, I went to get somebody from the front desk and I told her what happened. She couldn't explain how someone else's stuff got into my locker, number 12, that I had just unlocked with my combination. She looked at me like I was a weirdo and said she would try and unlock the other ones around it to help me find my stuff. I told her to try number 6 because that's the one I was going to use in the first place, but I wasn't able to open it with my combination. She used the key to open it, and inside were my jacket and my keys. I can usually come up with some kind of, logical explanation, even if it's far-fetched when weird things happen, but with this one, I'm completely stumped. Tore apart room looking for partner's passport, found it months later in a spot that we checked multiple times. My partner and I were set to go on an out-of-country trip with his parents in April. After they booked the flights, we were going to do TSA pre-check, so we needed our passports for the appointment. My passport was in the safe where we normally kept them, but we couldn't find my partner's passport anywhere. We searched the room up and down and made quite a mess while doing so. We cleared off the dresser, pulled it out, looked behind and under it, but it was nowhere to be found. We eventually canceled our tickets for the flight because we didn't think we could get him a new passport in time. This was a few months ago. Flash forward to a couple of nights ago, I'm sitting on the bed with him and notice something that looks like the passport underneath the dresser, but it was too dark to tell. I get up and grab it. Guess what it is? It's his passport. I literally cannot explain this at all. We pulled out the dresser and looked all around it for that damn passport, and we couldn't find it. We tore apart the entire room looking for it. I know it's not a huge glitch or anything, but I feel like this stuff happens rather frequently to me, and it just drives me nuts. We looked for hours because obviously we wanted to go on our trip. We literally canceled our tickets because we couldn't find it. It's so weird that I just looked over and saw it in a spot that we thoroughly checked multiple times. There's no explanation for this, and I thought you guys might enjoy this weird experience of mine. Wrong place, right time. Here's a little backstory. I'm a pharmacy technician for a large corporation in the United States. I get a call from a store that I don't recognize late Friday night. Turns out it's on the opposite side of the country, and they want me to take a script from them and fill it over here. Maybe the patient is traveling. Who knows? It's not my business. Whatever. But then the person I'm talking to says, "So, how's it going over there today?" and uses my name. And immediately, I break into a cold sweat because, what the F? How does this random person across the country know my name? But I hang up after it's done because I don't want to question it any further. As I'm filling the script, I get even more freaked out and ask the pharmacist what she thinks I should do. So I call them back to make sure they actually wanted me to fill it, and if they actually do know me and if they're just messing with me. Turns out, the person on the other line was trying to call a different store in the same state that they're in, with the person who's working there also has my name. Their store number is 1 digit off of mine. It's really weird and coincidental. I'm still thinking about it and wondering how that even happened. Friend's dog duplicated glitch. This happened literally just 10 minutes ago, and it's freaking me out. I'm currently at a friend's house. Just a few minutes ago, they were taking their dog out on a walk. They have 2 dogs that they walk one after the other every couple of hours. Sometimes when I'm over there, I walk with them. But today, I just wasn't really feeling it, to be honest. I come from the Northwest and moved down to the Southwest 8 months ago, and I still haven't adjusted to the heat. So to me, even a walk around the block in the spring feels super hot, so this time I chose to stay inside. The dogs are named Bruce and Ozzy, just for some quick context. Anyway, we're at his house alone. His parents are working and his older brother is out with friends, and my friend Ron had just gotten back from walking Ozzy a little over a half an hour ago. Then he came back and switched out, taking the leash off of Ozzy and putting it on to Bruce before leaving the house to take him out. Ozzy came into Ron's room, where I was and still am, and just laid on the bed. Almost 10 minutes after Ron had left with Bruce, I heard some shuffling noises from Ron's brother's room and thought really nothing of it because he also has a cat. But a few moments later, I hear the door to his brother's bedroom creak open, and I hear the sound of footsteps. And out of his brother's bedroom and into the hallway right in front of Ron's room comes Bruce. It took me a moment to really register what I saw, but when I did, I sort of just looked at the dog. He just stood right in front of the room, wagging his little tail like he normally would. Ozzy, who was still on the bed with me, immediately perked up and hopped off the bed, sniffing Bruce for a moment before returning to the bed and whining, sort of looking back and forth between me and the other dog. Not once have I heard Ozzy make noise other than the first time I came over to my friend's house where he barked a little bit, but that was it. So hearing him suddenly start whining brought me this disturbing feeling. I literally just sat and stared. After a moment, Bruce left from out in front of the bedroom door, ate food from his dog bowl, drank some water, and just did all the normal dog things. I was so confused, and after like a minute of my staring, I finally looked away, just thinking, what the cinnamon toast frick? Before getting up and walking over to the dog. He was literally right there. I could pet him, and he licked my hand and my arm. Did. Then he retreated back into Ron's brother's bedroom, and as soon as he disappeared around the corner, Ron opened the front door and walked inside with Bruce. And I was just standing in the corner. I didn't say anything at all about it to him, but I swear to God, either I'm hella hallucinating because I could literally feel the wet spots on my hand and arm from where Bruce licked me just a moment prior Ron walked in, or this is a serious glitch. Anyway, I haven't said anything about it to him, but it's honestly the most freaky thing I've ever experienced, and I have genuinely no explanation. I'm completely sober. I haven't touched drugs or alcohol ever in my life, and I'm not even remotely tired. And I feel like I know I wasn't just imagining things, since not only me, but also Ozzy made physical contact with this duplicate dog. This person includes an update that says, "The power in my town went out all day from the moment I woke up, and so did the service, which sucks, so I'm sorry that I'm updating this so late at night. I got back from Mexico last night and passed out. I just drove over to Ron since I couldn't text him to ask if I could come over, but I promised I'd come see him when I was back. We hung out for a little and went on a walk through the flood wash by my house, and that's when I told him about my experience. It went essentially how I expected it to. He didn't believe me. He thought I was just making stuff up at first. When I told him I was serious, he just went quiet for a little and then brushed it off and said something like, "Yeah, sure," very sarcastically. I didn't bring it up again. I'm not really upset that he didn't believe me because I know it happened and I know I'm not lying. In fact, I'm actually sort of glad that he just thought I was being weird and making stuff up, because to me, that's better than him thinking I'm crazy or something. And I'm glad I posted this here too. It's nice to know that some people believe me, and this sub itself has a lot of stories similar to mine, so I know that stuff like this does in fact happen, and it helps me find something to relate to, even if this is really the only glitch I've ever experienced. This is most likely the end of this, as I know I'm definitely not going to bring it up again. But if Ron does, and the conversation actually goes somewhere this time and it's worth posting about, I'll make another update. Thanks to you guys for the support as well. Coffee machine that no one remembers. I was looking through old photos on my phone the other day, and I noticed in one photo of a place that I lived in around 8 years ago, there's an espresso coffee machine on the kitchen counter. Why is this odd? Well, I have absolutely no recollection of ever owning a coffee machine. Everything else in the photo I remember owning, but not that machine. I literally have no memory of ever having a coffee machine. In the photo, I can see my French press that I always used until I did buy an espresso machine 2 years later, but why would I be using a French press if I had an espresso machine? Indeed, why would I buy an espresso machine 2 years later if I already had one? I asked a couple of mates who used to drop in for a cuppa? What are we saying here? I asked a couple of mates who used to drop in for a cuppa and chat at that place that I lived in 8 years ago, and neither of them can remember me having a coffee machine. Whenever they popped over, they remember me either offering them a French press coffee or a cup of tea. I drink a lot of coffee, so this isn't something that I would simply forget owning. I have a photo of an item that no one, including myself, has any memory of me ever owning. I have no memory of buying it, using it, taking it with me when I moved to another town, or disposing of it. I only remember using a French press until I bought a coffee machine 6 years ago. What's going on here? Running in reverse. I will say that I've read many posts, and my story may not be as interesting, but my husband and I talk about this all the time. My husband and I were on a road trip a few years ago. At the time, we preferred to travel at night. Less traffic, we were in our early 20s and didn't mind all-nighters, and we were on Interstate Highway 95 heading south. We used to take this drive a few times a year, to the point where we don't really need GPS anymore. We were very familiar with the drive. Anyway, it's the middle of the night in one of the Carolinas. We're not by a big city, so any light in the sky, street light, or a headlight would be really noticeable. The interstate is fairly empty at this time. It's roughly 2 in the morning. And I notice an overpass/bridge that I don't remember being there. I see that my husband notices it too, and he tilts his head and says, Before I can say, that's new, or I don't remember that, we notice a man is being illuminated by orange-looking lights, like a row of street lamps that are close together, while he's running. He has long, curly hair and seems to be running at full speed. I mention the hair length because typically if you're running with your hair down, your hair trails behind you. Well, his hair was trailing behind him, but he was running backwards. Not like a backwards run, but like someone pressed a rewind button. His movements, his hair, his everything. My husband and I would consider ourselves runners, and his form was what we noticed first. It looked like he ran forward, but someone was rewinding it. As we drive under this bridge, I turn around, and I don't see the bridge anymore. Then my husband blurts out, "What the F was that?" And for the remainder of the drive, we tried to rationalize it, but I don't know, man, it still freaks us both out. We call it a glitch, but it seemed to be more like a rewind. Where did the overpass/bridge come from? Where did it go? And where did the lights go? I will add that my husband is very geographically gifted and can remember places very well. A few days later, we're driving back home, and you know what still isn't there? The bridge. I have evidence. I'm so sure that we live in a simulation because of what happened to me yesterday. So, I was making an ashtray from my used snus container. The container is made of two pieces, the bottom and the top part. So I opened it and I put the top part on my sofa and the bottom part on my counter. My cat knocked over the bottom part of the snus container, so I picked it up, and the container was closed. It had the bottom and the top part back together again. So, you might think that I just probably forgot to open it, and that would be the case if the previous top part that I put on my sofa wasn't still there. But it was. So, now I'm left with one complete snus container and only one top part of a different snus container that didn't exist an hour ago. I think my cat glitched last night. My partner and I are dumbfounded. Last night, after dinner, my partner, I'll call him H, went back into the kitchen for something and observed Luna, our black cat, sitting on the little red stool that I put in the kitchen in front of the French doors a few days ago. I put that there so the cats can look outside. We have red curtains flanking those doors, and the curtains were pulled closed, providing a contrasting backdrop for Luna, who was on the stool. H said, "Luna's on the stool and he shows up well with the red curtains behind him." I'm always talking about how I can't take good photos of Luna because he's black and you can never see him well. He said it kind of in passing, and I made a mental note to take a photo of him sometime in that spot. So, H comes back to join me on the sofa, and we chat for about 10 to 15 minutes or so, and he gets up to go back to the kitchen. He said, "Luna's still in here on the stool." I told him that was weird, that he'd just be hanging out by himself in a dark, closed-off kitchen. Normally, he'd be with us wherever we are. It wasn't like he had anything to look at outside. The curtains were closed due to the cold drafts. I tried to reason out that weird behavior, but you know cats, they do weird things, so I didn't think much of it. I told H that he's probably just waiting for a treat. I'd been giving him cat treats every night for the last 3 nights or so that kind of made sense. As H was leaving the kitchen, he tried calling for Luna to come out, but he didn't. I tried calling too from the sofa. By the way, you can't see the kitchen door/stool where Luna was from our sofa in the living room. As H was walking out of the kitchen and through the dining room towards the sofa again, we were talking about how Luna knows the word treat and that I have to spell it out so he doesn't get all worked up. H suggested that I call out that I have a treat so that maybe he'd come out of the dark kitchen and join us in the living room. I told him that if I did that, I'd have to actually get up and go get a treat from the kitchen when he came out, and I was being lazy. But ultimately, we decided to test the little experiment. By this time, H had joined me back on the sofa. There's a chair next to the sofa where our blonde cat, Soul, was snoozing away on a cozy black blanket through all of this. I noted that I wasn't sure if Soul knew the word treat, as well as Luna, and said that it would be interesting to see how Soul responds. I started at first in a softer voice. "Anybody want a treat?" Still, no Luna emerging from the kitchen. So I said it again a little louder. We looked over at Soul and he was slowly opening up his sleepy little eyes, but still no Luna. I said it again 2 or 3 times and All the while, we were glancing between Sol and toward the dark kitchen entry, watching to see if Luna would come out. And then, while I was looking at Sol, whose head was completely raised at this point, I see right beside him another pair of green eyes. And I quickly realize, we actually both realized at the same time, that Luna was curled up on the chair with Sol. And when I say curled up, it was the kind of curled up they're in when cats are in total relaxation or nap mode. I'm not sure about other people who have cat siblings, but with my cats, if they end up napping together, it usually starts with one cat already asleep, usually Sol, and then the other will jump up on them and start cleaning them, licking their ears and faces. Then one of two things will happen. They either start to play fight until it turns serious-ish, in which I have to usually scold one of them because usually the napping cat just isn't in the mood to play fight, or, on rare occasions, the imposing cat just cleans his brother and then curls up and sleeps right next to him. It is never just a cat jumps up on the other and goes to sleep or enters chill mode. It's always a process. I know because I always have to keep an eye on them when one jumps on the other in case one, usually Luna, starts bullying the other, biting too hard, stuff like that. So this means at some point between H leaving the kitchen the second time, when H observed Luna still on the stool and coming to the sofa, Luna would have had to have darted out really quickly without us noticing and then ran straight to the chair that his brother was in, all within full view of where we both were, by the way, and settled down right away without waking up his brother. This just isn't the way that Luna operates, though. He doesn't dart through the house, unless on rare occasions he's playing with his brother and they have the zoomies. Otherwise, Luna lumbers. He's a lumberer. That's why his nickname is Luna Bear. He looks and lumbers just like a small black bear. And what's more, I had called out, "Anybody want a treat?" and treat several times. Ordinarily, when treat time is announced, he always comes running into the room, meowing like crazy and acting like he's dying or going through food withdrawal and just needs a hit, that life-saving cat treat. I don't know, it's a running joke that the food/treats are one of the rare things that he'll actually run for. But he was just sitting there on the chair, curled up next to his brother, looking at me like, "What are you going on about?" We were, and still are, so baffled. H and I looked at each other just like, what the F just happened? He immediately went back to the kitchen where he just was, and there was no Luna on the stool, because she was on the chair next to us. I don't even know, dude, but damn. Dog lunged at me, and a second later, it was gone. I had something unexplainable happen to me the other day. I was walking my dog down the sidewalk when I noticed from across the street a dog with hair raised and teeth snarling, charging at me. It came in quick. It was a few feet away, and I saw it charging and ready to lunge at me. I turned my back and covered myself in my dog. I closed my eyes and braced myself for the bite. But I didn't feel anything. And a couple seconds later, I looked back and I couldn't find the dog anywhere. There's no way that it could have bolted and hid in that amount of time. I was stunned, and I still can't stop thinking about it. One of my tumbled crystals is no longer tumbled. This has absolutely blown my mind. I'm a crystal collector. I also have a rock tumbler that I like to throw rough pieces in from time to time. I have a lapis lazuli worry stone that broke into two pieces a couple of years ago. This past summer, I finally got a tumbler and was excited to tumble the two broken pieces to smooth out the rough edges. I threw them in with some other stones of the same-ish hardness, and for those that don't know, tumbling takes a lot of time and multiple rounds with different types of grit. So, a week goes by. It's time to take them out, clean them, and put them back in with a different grit. I was with my husband in the kitchen as I was assembling them back in the tub. I mentioned to him how I love how this particular piece is smoothing and excited for the end result. The rocks tumble, and about a week later, I take them to do the process again. My husband helps me rinse them off in the backyard. We're done, we come back in, and I start putting them back. And that's when I noticed the larger piece of the lapis that broke is missing. No big deal, probably just fell outside while I was rinsing. So I searched and searched the whole yard. At this point, I'm upset because I was really excited about this particular piece. I looked everywhere, even in illogical places. Maybe it could have dissolved? No. The other small piece was still in the batch, with no issues, plus there would be blue grit everywhere. It was a whole ordeal for me, and I was ranting about it to my husband all night. Could never find it, so I moved on. Then, this morning, it's my coworker's birthday, and she's been starting to take an interest in crystals. I have quite a bit of raw pieces, so I thought I'd go through my box and pick a couple for her. Then, there it was, sitting on top of all the other ones, totally untumbled. I'm just completely baffled. I told my husband, and he's just as bewildered as me. We both know this happened, and nothing logical can explain it. Side note, when it went missing, I said to my husband, watch, it'll just appear out of nowhere one day. But having it also in the state it was before I started tumbling is a whole new level of weird. Elevator guy. This happened a few years back at my college dorm. My roommate and I, both around age 19, were coming back to the dorm after dark. It's one of those buildings where you have to scan your university ID card to get in. Unless someone from the outside lets you in, there's no other way. We walk up to the building and see someone maybe 10 feet ahead of us scan their card and then go inside. The key here is that he is just far enough ahead of us to where as soon as he goes inside and the door shuts itself, we are there scanning our IDs to open the door for ourselves. Once inside the lobby area, there's one elevator on either side. These elevators are maybe just another 10 feet from the entrance door that we just walked in. As we walk inside the building, we see the person who went in before us walk inside the elevator, and the doors shut just as we approach it. It's the same elevator that he just got into. I pressed the button, and to my surprise, the doors opened instantly. And I mean instantly. As soon as the doors closed, they were opening again, except this time, there was nobody inside them. I hesitated, but I walked into the elevator and pushed my floor button. The energy between me and my roommate felt tense, and I didn't say anything as I was trying to rationalize what I just saw in my brain. My roommate spoke up first, saying, "Did you just see that guy?" and verified that I wasn't the only one who had seen it. We continued trying to come up with some kind of explanation, but came to nothing. Even if the elevator guy only went up one floor, there was nowhere near enough time for the elevator to go up and then come back down in time. Again, the doors closed with him inside mere seconds before they reopened after I pushed the button. I've never experienced anything like this since then, and honestly, it still spooks me. Portal to another dimension. I'm posting this here, hoping that maybe you guys can help me explain it. I don't think it was supernatural, but it was strange enough that it's disturbed my understanding of reality in a very small but definite way. Perhaps there's an answer to what I observed, and maybe the answer is stranger than anything I can imagine. Here's what happened. Around 1999, when gas was 99 cents a gallon, I would take the long drive from Glendale, Arizona to Tempe to visit friends quite often. At around 9 p.m., my buddy Chris and I stopped to get gas at the corner station before heading out onto the freeway. It was in June, and the temperature was probably 90+ degrees Fahrenheit, and the sun was down. We pulled into the spot. I opened my gas cap and started pumping gas. I stoop approximately 4 feet from the pump and was standing close but not touching my car, which was a 1997 Mitsubishi Eclipse. Chris was standing on my side, the driver's side, and was about 4 feet from me. The place was very well lit, like most gas stations, and it was self-serve. Chris and I were talking about something when, directly between us, a portal opened up for 1 second and then closed. I'll describe it in the most detailed way that I can. It was a thin line, maybe 1.5 feet long, that had no perceptible width. It sparkled with an intensely bright white light. It was perfectly aligned vertically. The sparkles were strange in that they weren't flashes, nor were they electrical in behavior. The intensity was like viewing a laser in the dark and dropping bits of glitter through the beam, except this laser was white and the glitter was infinitely small. Another odd property of this line was the bits of white light seemed to travel downward in one direction, and where they stopped in midair was very abrupt. There was no phasing in or out. Imagine taking an X-Acto knife to reality. It started and stopped without any warning. At first, we both said, "Holy crap, did you see that?" And before I allowed Chris to say anything else, my skeptical inquirer training set in. "What did you see?" I asked him. I wanted to hear him tell me the event without me biasing his perception of it. That white sparkle, what did it look like? It just started and stopped like glitter or something. Where was it? He pointed to the same place that I witnessed it too. We spent a couple of minutes searching the area. At first, I looked above us and we waved our hands around to see if there were any spider webs. I inspected the roof of the gas station and saw a few moths, but they were nearer the lamps about 20 feet up than to us. The weather was clear, almost no humidity. Chris and I drove to Tempe talking about this thing the entire trip. I was surprised that it happened at a gas station because if it were electrical, it might have been dangerous. But Chris and I both agreed that it looked nothing like electricity or anything else that we had ever seen. I've searched for an explanation and still do every once in a while. I've ruled out St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning, fairies, etc. I've pondered if some kind of insect could produce something like this in a kind of web or something, but the intense light that came from the object is pretty difficult to imagine. A laser beam seems to be the best idea, but a white one? And what would allow it to start and stop in midair? Different shoes. I never thought I'd be posting a glitch of my own, but here we are. I wear a uniform for my work. I'm very particular about the shoes that I wear to work. Black leather, lace-up, ankle boots. Always the same type for around 20 years now. Flying out of a different airport for the next couple of days, I got to the hotel tonight. I laid out my uniform for an early start tomorrow, grabbed the shoe polish to give the boots a little buff, The seams on the heels of my trusty boots are completely different. They have a textured leather overlay rather than just a stitched seam. This is impossible. I've had this pair of boots for months now. They stay in my work suitcase, and I polish them often. I live alone, and nobody else could have messed with them. Quite frankly, I'm dumbfounded. I thought it was watermelon. Kind of a strange glitch in the Matrix, so bear with me, but I feel like I somehow manifested the reality that I really wanted. My partner and I went to the store together for the first time in a while yesterday, so that I could get a fruit tray and he could get some snacks. We ended up grabbing a random tray on our way through to find the cheese sticks. When we got home and cracked it open, we realized that we got the wrong one. I'd wanted one with cantaloupe in it, and we picked up the one that had watermelon. I mentioned this to him, but said that I'd eat the watermelon anyway, I suppose. He tried it and said that he didn't actually like watermelon, but it had honeydew, which he did like, so that was fine. I'd say I ate about half the watermelon before we put it up for the night. I went to work and then took a nap when I got home. Well, just as I got up, we got the tray back out, and when I opened it, where there had been watermelon was now cantaloupe. I kinda just blankly stared at it and proceeded to turn to him and ask, "Wasn't this watermelon just yesterday?" Disappearing car, traffic, and gray world. This happened to me years ago and messed with my mind. None of it made sense. I was working for a company where I did deliveries. We had clients that were mostly in the city that I worked in, with a few that were a few hours' drive from the shop. One drive in particular was a 200-mile drive one way. They were our largest account for a long time, and it more than paid off for the time and fuel used to get up there and back. This was a trip that I did all in one day, so a 400-mile round trip. This may seem like a useless detail to put here, but it'll provide some context for the rest of the story. The first few times running this delivery were pretty daunting. It was a full-day event, 3 to 4 hours up and the same time back depending on traffic, weather, or other circumstances. It got easier after doing it twice a month for a few months. My body acclimated to it, and it became a drive that I actually enjoyed doing. The company that I worked for was tiny, family-owned and run. Excellent people to work for. They treated their employees as if they were extended family. The most enjoyable part of it was not having anyone around you, needing you to do things, or breathing down your neck. A good 85% of the drive was on an interstate, I-94 to be exact. By the time this experience happened, I had done this drive probably hundreds of times. I knew the drive and the route very well. I could drive it blindfolded, as the saying goes. One time, I was driving this route on a beautiful summer day. Bright blue sky, comfortably warm, and the traffic was flowing well. By this point, I had already been on the interstate for about an hour or so. Anyone who's driven interstates for any distances knows that there are parts of interstates where exits, on and off ramps, become pretty sparse with miles between them. Around this time, I passed an on-ramp onto the interstate that I was traveling on. At the time, nothing seemed amiss. I looked in my rearview mirror and I noticed a car coming up the on-ramp and merging behind me. Nothing unusual about that. It happens pretty often. Just your usual run-of-the-mill car, probably something like a Toyota Camry that's a dime a dozen with your average Joe behind the wheel. But this is where things become weird. A few minutes later, I look in my rear view again, and that car is no longer there. I looked to my left side to see if he was in the passing lane to get around me, but he wasn't there either. Nor was he in front of me like he had made the pass without me noticing. Now some might think, well, maybe he got off at the next exit without you noticing. The thing is, though, that wasn't possible. This was a stretch of the interstate where entrance ramps and the next exit ramp were miles apart. Not just a few miles, but like 15 to 20 miles apart. As to be expected, as this part of the interstate went through the middle of nowhere. It didn't pass through or near any cities or towns for there to be exit ramps to get to, and there were no rest stops or waysides that he could have pulled off into either. This car just up and disappeared. While I was thinking about what had happened and where he could have disappeared to, I started to notice that something else was off as well. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, just a sense of unease about something that I couldn't articulate to myself. That's when I noticed that the sky had turned a solid, dull gray. Not an overcast gray where there would be clouds or smoke in the air. It was just gray. Like something else had replaced the sky and the scenery was drab. And that wasn't the only thing. I also noticed that there was no traffic for miles. No one in front of me or behind me, not even on either side of the interstate. Sure, this would happen from time to time, especially during times when traffic was light, but that would only last a few minutes at the most. This felt like it went on for hours. It was quite unnerving as I had no idea what was really going on. I'm a person who's usually a very rational and critical thinker, but there didn't seem to be anything rational about this. After what seemed like an eternity, but was likely only a few minutes, I suddenly had what I could only describe as feeling like I had blacked out for a split second. If anyone else has experienced this, then you know what I'm talking about. It's like suddenly coming to again, or being thrust back into your reality, where your whole body jumps or lurches and you shake your head to rid yourself of the feeling. After that momentary lapse in consciousness, everything was back to normal. The sky, the traffic, everything. It's as if nothing ever happened. And I also noticed that I was about an hour closer to my stop. I got off the next exit and pulled into a convenience store parking lot to gather myself and to let my nerves calm, all the while playing the events back in my head, trying to decide what I thought actually happened. After my mind and body calmed down, I went into the store, I used the facilities, and got back into the vehicle and continued the drive. The rest of the day went normally, and that never happened to me again. If anyone has any ideas of what the heck happened, I'd be interested in hearing them.